Welcome on a Friday afternoon where apocalypse is in the air at Cineplexes. My name is JW Colwell. I'm the host of Generation Movie and Loud and Nerdy on the Indie Escape Network, and I am here on a Friday afternoon with apocalypse movies at the multiplexes in April. Is where we're at. So we're going to do some quick reviews of two new movies that are hitting multiplexes this week. One is going to be really limited. The other one is going to be one of the more talked about and controversial movies of the year. And we're going to start with the controversial movie that everybody is talking about. Perhaps the concept that it's too soon or something we don't want to discuss or think about. But that is one of the main things going on in Civil War, which is Alex Garland's new film. Alex Garland, of course, a director that really loves kind of jumping into the fray with regards to the environment, with regards to AI, with regards to the relationship between men and women. And now he has created this movie called Civil War, and it's from A24, one of our favorite working studios going right now because they make so many interesting movies. This is one of the cards that they handed out like at the theaters last night. What kind of American are you? And that's the movie's premise, as an all-engulfing Civil War kind of catapults four journalists, and makes them look at the fray from their own perspective. Kirsten Dunst stars as a photojournalist who has seen it all, done it all, been embedded in Iraq, been in Afghanistan, seen people burned alive. She's seen everything. So when she watches these things occur, she's just covering it as a story. She early on in the film meets a young photographer who she takes a mentorship role with, and basically, just is trying to protect this young photographer who idolizes her and who basically is like looking at it. The movie is like, I don't want to disappoint anybody. It's not a movie that is going to tell you why we're having a civil war or, what the pretenses are for it, or how, for example, in the movie's plot, how California and Texas are working together, a typically blue state and a typically red state. But that's not the question. The question for the movie, and it's not even this question, what kind of American are you? It's, that question gets asked. The movie is a road movie that essentially looks at what a civil war would look like on America's ground. And we're a long way away from the Civil War we had in our past, and things have certainly changed a great deal. And so Alex Garland basically does a road movie where these four journalists, including many good actors in this movie. Kirsten Dunst plays Lee, Wagner Moura plays Joel, Haley Spenny, who may remember from Priscilla and Bad Times at El Royale, and Stephen Henderson. She plays Jesse. He plays Sammy, and basically he's like the elder statesman that kind of like wants to go on this journey with the younger journalists. So it's a film about how important journalism is and how important the truth tellers are in our world, but it's also a road movie where basically these characters are involved in a series of vignettes that perhaps kind of call to mind how a protracted civil war would play out in our country. And it's just, it's bone chilling. It's frightening. There's people on the side of the road that are trading, basically gas for Canadian money as our money has failed. There is a lot of, this older photographer trying to teach this young photographer not to get too involved. not to get too close. And it involves this kind of a president that has disbanded the rule about running for a third term. He's on his third term. Many of the states have broken away, but he has a concentration of states left, and it's about them trying to go interview him, even though he has outlawed journalists in and around Washington D.C. So it's kind of like a suicide mission, but it's also not. And basically, the front line of the war is in Charlottesville, Virginia, which of course is newsworthy. It's a place where we've had some weird, ridiculous kind of racial things going on, and also, just people who couldn't tell what the right side is. So it's all kind of it's controversial, it's interesting, but it is not a movie about why we're having a civil war. It's about a movie about the horrors of what could happen in a civil war, and there's a whole sequence of learning that when somebody else is shooting at you, what their grasp on reality is or what their feelings are, it becomes less important. And the idea that we're getting away from a place where we can talk these problems out, and maybe we're developing a coarseness to it of how horrific it would be to have troops rolling down the streets in American cities, or how ridiculous it might be that a sideshow roadside attraction that was designed for drive-through Christmas thing could be laced up with landmines and a sniper. And it's jarring, it's affecting, and it also takes into effect these amateur people who would be fighting with real military, who would be going toe to toe with actual military people, and just how dangerous and scary people's views. What kind of American are you question comes up midway through the movie, where they run into a roadside guerrilla group that's basically just killing everybody. And so, when somebody's pointing a gun at you, it doesn't matter what their beliefs are. You can't, at that point, you can't talk it through and figure things out. So this movie is very much, it's a road movie about the importance of journalism, and it's also a road movie about what could happen if we allow ourselves to get past the talking stage. And I think it's kind of a cautionary tale. It's a cautionary tale for people who might look at it and go, who throw around the words, we're headed for a civil war, or we're going to have a civil war. It's kind of a cautionary tale. Like, what are you actually rooting for here? When you say I'm rooting for a civil war, or that's going to cause a civil war, we're going to get into a civil war over this. This movie gives you an idea in broad perspectives on, it doesn't say who's right or wrong. It just says that if we're not talking things out, it's going to be wrong, and we're not even sure where it's headed, because we don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know how you're going to react to snipers on rooftops and down. They run into one place in the vignettes where it's like a small town that looks like, where the town basically has ignored that there's a civil war going on, or there are vast states that, Missouri and Colorado have just ignored it because there's enough expanse and distance between people to not worry about what the other states are doing. So it's a really interesting, it's a talker movie. It's a movie that gets you talking, gets you thinking, and makes you kind of, and the last half hour, 40 minutes is very gripping, as the forces of California and Texas, the Western forces, make an all-out assault on the White House, and what that would impede. And it's a real good movie that's got a lot of interesting questions asked. And Alex Garland has become one of our best directors. He asks really difficult questions. He makes really interesting movies. If you look at his movies that he's directed and that he's been a part of, he's been a part of Civil War, Men, where he's director and screenwriter. Annihilation, which is a fantastic 2018 movie, just about how nature might affect on us, what it could do to kind of fight back. He also directed the very amazing EX-MACHINA, which is about AI and what our what our control of AI is, and he's definitely a hot button director. This is the most expensive A24 movie in ever. It cost $50 million to make. So it's got a tough road to hoe, but it does have an engaging storyline. It moves very quickly. The action sequences are tense, taut, suspenseful, amazingly well done. And everything looks about as real as you could get. And just the idea of driving down a highway and just vast swaths of stores closed and places closed, and just the idea of trucks and military men going down the streets of a United States city should make anybody who wants, the idea of a civil war versus what's going to happen or how it's going to come to be, or that doesn't matter here. What matters is it's here. This is what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to be. And do you really want that for anybody? And will it be good for anybody? And I think he's really quite a great young director that really has full traction of hot button issues. And the Civil War movie, this movie, What Kind of American Are You, is a great question, but it's got a lot of questions on its mind. It's got a question about, Lee, the journalist played by Kirsten Dunst, has seen it all, so she's a little tired. She may be a little bit tired to be a mentor, but the young girl is Jessie. This Jessie character is so wrapped up in trying to learn how to do it, but not realizing the consequences or how dangerous it is. And of course, that will come into play. Nick Offerman has a small role as the American president. It's not a big role if you're an Offerman fan, but it's got a pretty interesting opening, and his role kind of closes the movie. So if it's definitely the hot button movie of the weekend. It's a thinking person's political thriller, but also more of a road trip movie about these little vignettes where slices of American life that have been impacted by the Civil War or by the impending Civil War. What's happening is where the movie is its bread and butter, and just learning different stories and learning about this journalist that has gone through the motions and done all these things. And Kirsten Dunst, it's probably her best work. If I'm being fair, she's fantastic in it. And if there's anybody who has any questions, please by all means, you can definitely send viewer comments. But it is not a movie about why we're having the Civil War. Civil War is already here, so it doesn't get into anything controversial there. It just kind of, is this what you really want, kind of thing. And in that particular way, it's amazing. It's unsettling. It's, what kind of American are you, gets asked, and that question is a scary question, because what if one of the Americans is somebody that's a patriot, that an expatriate from Hong Kong, and he may be an American citizen, but he's not what one of the characters views as a real American. So it takes very hard looks at what an actual civil war would be, and it's an apocalypse zone. It's absolute nightmare fuel and just a zone of terror. And these journalists go on this road trip where they encounter all kinds of things. People strung up for stealing food, and then you get a little slice where somebody strung up for stealing food is also somebody that went to high school with one of the people that strung him up, who didn't talk to him in high school. And you get a bit of the idea of, if we're not talking and all we're doing is fighting, this is what could happen to us. So it's a cautionary tale and it's a road trip movie, and Kirsten Dunst is really good. Everybody is really good. Kelly Spenny, Sammy Henderson, all very, very good. Stephen Henderson, I should say. So that is one of the apocalypse movies for this week. I got a chance, and here's the thing: I'm a former Blockbuster employee, and one of my favorite things when I worked at Blockbuster, worked for Blockbuster for 4 years of my life, and I loved every minute of it. One of my favorite jobs ever. One of my favorite things on a Friday night when I was working would be if I could turn somebody on to a movie before they knew what it was, right? And that is one of my favorite things to do now as a a budding film critic, somebody who hosts a movie, a movie history show, film history show called Generation Movie, and all these different things. Uh, you know, I am super excited when I find a movie that nobody knows about, and then all of a sudden could become one of the next great things. So one of the movies that I remember, vivid thing, I was one of the first people who was on Reservoir Dogs, and I would take people and I would give Reservoir. We had 4 copies of Reservoir Dogs, and I would give Reservoir Dogs out for people who were looking for something different. And this is before Tarantino hit, and right out of like 91, 92. And I am pleased as punch to say that I found this movie called Arcadian. It's opening this week. It's all around the country. It is super interesting, super fun. It is a Nic Cage movie. I am happy to report it is subtle, thought-provoking, thoughtful Nic Cage. And basically, we don't know why. And again, this is Apocalypse Weekend at the box office. In Arcadian, Nic Cage plays a father of 2 boys. And they are played by the fabulous Jaden Martell, who you may recognize from Knives Out, and It. So he's one of the young actors in this movie, and Maxwell Jenkins, who has been in a couple things, but nothing really earth-shattering. They play his sons, and basically what happens is, it starts out with the end of the world as we know it, like a major city that's going under, and Nic Cage is running away from the city, and he gets out to this middle of nowhere where he has a shack, and there are 2 boys he's taking care of. They're both babies, and then it cuts to 15 years later, and we don't know what the ramifications of, like, Cage basically says, we don't know where they came from, we don't know why they came from, we don't know if they're part of the end of the world or whatever, but there is a dark lurking presence at night. So the 2 boys and the father have a very set pattern of everything that has to be done, the checklist every day as sun sets, and how the house has to be prepared for the night. So in a way, it's an apocalypse movie, but it also ends up becoming a creature movie and a father-son movie and a 2 brothers movie, and a young love movie. It's a coming-of-age movie as well. So it's all these things wrapped into one. And Arcadian is really interesting. We don't know what the creatures are, but we know they attack at night. We know that there are other enclaves around the valley that they live in. And the one son is getting itchy. The one son, leaves every day, and he's a little bit late getting home. And the other son is kind of like the stay-at-home son that is working to understand what his lot is. Joseph, played by Jada Martell, is trying to understand the creatures, trying to understand their attack patterns, trying to come up with different things. He's also an inventor, so he's trying to build some things in the garage while his dad is, encouraging him. And Nic Cage is subtle, with raising 2 boys to be young men in this true life apocalypse, this real life world that is just scary. And then around the 3rd act, it becomes a creature feature. It becomes quite possibly one of the scariest movies we'll ever see, but also, and I say this with H.R. Giger, I say this with Attack the Block in mind, the creatures at the end of this movie are stunningly good. They are scary. You never really find out what they are, but you do get to see them. A lot of jumping around, a lot of movement. They have a Muppet-like movement to them that's terrifying. They're furry, but they're also bugs. they burrow, but they're not. They may or may not be marsupials. It's I can't really explain it except the creature design is so effing good. It's so good. It's one of the best creature designs I've ever seen in a movie, and I've seen a lot of horror movies. Seen a lot of creature designs. The movie is very reminiscent of A Quiet Place, but darker, and a little bit scarier because these creatures don't get shown until near the end of the movie, and when they do get shown, everything you see about them is off-putting. It's scary, and you don't know how you would react to them, and it's just a really well done movie. Nic Cage is really good. He's subtle in it. The movie belongs to the young stars. The performances by them are really good, um, especially especially Joseph, um, played by Jaden Martell. He's really good. The kid, he's trying to build and trying to fix things. Maxwell Jenkins playing Thomas is really good too. They're the brothers that are kind of like mismatched brothers. But the movie is fantastic. Um, and it once it hits the third act, it's about an hour and a half movie, but the last 30 minutes are just fast. Boom, boom, boom. Um, Excellence of execution with an animal or creature that we don't understand, and we don't understand by the end of the movie either. We just know they come out at night. And so it's scary, it's creepy. Of course, there's another farm where Joseph, one of the young boys, or Thomas, I should say, finds a girl who lives on the farm named Charlotte, and and a lot of things happen in the last half hour of this movie. It's great though. It is. It is. I predict at some point it's made by Shutter Films. When this movie gets out to the masses, at horror festivals or whatever, the creature design is going to be talked about. The creature design is probably the big, like, I know Nic Cage is in it, but the creature design is so good, is it's why I'm really recommending it, and also because I feel like it's one of those movies where the world is so fully realized, that the plot holes can be overlooked in Arcadian because of how good performances are by the young stars and Nic Cage, and by how great the creature designs are. And I'd be remiss not to talk a little bit, because I talked about Alex Garland. Benjamin Brewer is the director of this movie, and he's directed a couple things. He didn't direct. He's directed a couple movies. He directed a movie called The Trust. He directed a movie uh, he wrote a movie called Reptile, which was a big movie on Netflix. And he was the effects supervisor and the effects head for Everything Everywhere All at Once. So the effects are amazing, and it's a low budget movie. It's well done. Nic Cage is great in it, although subtle. So it's not manic Nic Cage, which is great. The young performances, are really good. Like, they're top notch. And this movie is an unhidden. It's a hidden gem. It's terrifying. It's very dark. The creatures burrow, so there's a little bit of like cave fighting. It's really good, and I can't recommend it enough. And I guarantee you've never seen a creature design like this. And I just high marks for the creature design and for the design of the world. And that's all I can ask for in an apocalypse movie, is that you design. If you're going to make it a creature feature, the creatures better be new and something we haven't seen. And like I said, the movie it most resembles is A Quiet Place, but the creatures are a little darker. Not it's not a sound thing. So, two movies at the box office this week. Again, Arcadians in limited release around the country. I can't recommend it enough. It's distributed by Shutter Films. It's also in the South by Southwest Film Festival as one of the midnight screenings. It's a great, great little movie, that makes me feel like when I was a kid working at Blockbuster and finding a gem. And I can't explain it enough how important that is when we find these gems. to shout from the rooftops about how good they are. Creature design in this movie is out of this world. I guarantee you've never seen anything like it. I guarantee it. Anyway, so two really great choices this weekend. Civil War is not nearly as controversial as you think it is. It's more of a road movie. It doesn't get into the reasons on why we would have a civil war. It just asks really difficult questions of, do you really want a civil war? Because this is what a civil war looks like. It also asks the probing question, what kind of American are you? Right? And that is an important question. Like, are you the type of American that talks about civil war and wants to see a civil war, up until the point it happens? Is that what this movie is about? When it happens, it's going to be too late to talk things out. Because when somebody's firing a gun at you, we can't chat anymore. There's no reason behind it. There's no rhyme or reason. So it asks a lot of probing questions. And again, Kirsten Dunst is really good, man. She's fantastic as the photojournalist. I highly recommend it. Also, Arcadian opening this weekend, limited release, so if you can find it, if it's in your area, give it a look see. Creature design top notch, subtle Nic Cage performance, good young star performances that'll turn heads. And I think you'll be in on the ground floor. And this is how I used to feel at Blockbuster. You're in on the ground floor of a cult horror film in the making. Because I think Arcadian we're going to be talking about, especially creature design, because it's like anything you've ever seen before. So thank you so much for joining me on these reviews. Again, both thumbs up. Like, I don't want to do thumbs up, but both recommends Civil War for the if you want to be on the zeitgeist of a moment at the box office where people are asking difficult questions, with a studio like A24 that asks really big questions. And then if you want to be on the ground floor of a super duper creature feature / apocalypse movie that has a chance to become a huge cult film, Arcadian, I can't recommend it enough. Nicolas Cage is fantastic. And two young stars, like I said, two young stars in Jaden Martell, I should say, who is in It and Knives Out, and Maxwell Jenkins, who plays Thomas's brother. Really good star performances from these young guys working with Nic Cage. So thank you for joining me on this Friday afternoon, right in at about a half hour. I'll put it out one more time. I see some people in the room. If you have any questions, really quick, you want to ask any questions before I go about what kind of movie Civil War is or Arcadian, you can do that now. I'll wait about 30 seconds. Again, these are two good movies, can't go wrong. Also, can't go wrong with this movie over my back if you haven't seen it yet. Godzilla, Kong, The New Empire, a lot of fun. Kind of movie that, makes it fun to go to the movies. But Civil War asking tough questions this weekend at the box office. And Arcadian doing amazing things with some young stars and Nic Cage and amazing creature design. Have a good weekend. Have a good time. Go to a movie. Talk to you soon. We'll see everybody on Generation Movie coming this week, where we're doing the next in our Bondathon. We are doing this Roger Moore Bond, The Spy Who Loved Me, introduces Jaws, also introduces the submarine car, one of the cool Bond cars. And then on Tuesday, Loud and Nerdy at 9 p.m. with my good friends Jerry and Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend. Go see a movie, watch some Fallout on Amazon Prime, and we'll see everybody next week on Generation Movie and Loud and Nerdy.